So this is something which we are going to discuss, right? So like in the previous lecture, we have talked about three schema architecture. So then we have introduced this concept called schema, right? So schema primarily control two important concepts. First is how data will be going to store, in which structure or in which syntax, and second thing is how data will be uh, shown or maybe represented on the user's uh, GUI or maybe user's platform, right? So primarily two things, right? And whenever we are using schema term in a generic way, it simply says schema defines the storage pattern or storage structure and its representation. That's the most precise definition about schema. Right. So when we open up about this three schema architecture for database system, we have mentioned there are the need of three different schemas for three different layers or three different levels, right? And if you have more than three schema on any particular database system, like for cloud database system, you will have at least four levels. Then you need four schema. If any case like you must have heard about the this peer-to-peer connection systems, you're sometimes you are downloading few files
Sir,
from sharing file.
sir, your screen is not visible, sir.
So basically, uh, what should I do? Should I stop or again sharing, right? So
Yes, sir.
yeah. So basically, I think it is now stable.
So now it's visible, sir.
Yeah, right. So basically, what we have said this schema thing basically controls the data storage pattern and the view. So in case of this peer-to-peer connection, peer-to-peer database system, you need at least five levels, right? So for different situation, for different scenario, you should have different labels on the database, and for each label, you should have different schema, right? So when we have said this thing that we need different schema, naturally to create each schema, you need to have different schema creation language. That's one important thing. So you should say schema definition language, right? So by using these different languages, you can create different schemas on the database, right? So we will be going to have at least name of these schema creation languages. Then we will revise it. Okay, what are the possible different types of database user we will have, right? So like in a database system, it is not possible that you can assume that there is only one type of user. There are different types of user which will be using the database for different types of purposes, different types of operations, right? And it is one of the important concept again. Whenever we are designing a database, whenever we are using or selecting a DBMS also, like for any business purpose, if you have created a software, if you have asked for a software, sometimes it is required to purchase the DBMS software independently. So for that specific decision making, you need some awareness that this DBMS software will be able to help my user, my business user, something like that. So that's why it is important to understand that how a specific DBMS software will help you to a specific type of user in a which way or in what many ways, right? uh, at eventually at the last today, we will be opening up the block diagram of a DBMS to understand that what are the different blocks placed within each within the DBMS and its each layer, right? So let's open let's say what are the things we have partially covered. So we have talked about a database and its nature, its collection is said as a database. So this thing we have gone through. We have opened about the different internals of a database system in the previous lecture, where we have said database system is having three layers. In each layer we have different contents, different computing components. Then we have partially opened about the DBMS. So what is the DBMS? What is the definition, the purpose of it, right? So DBMS system is there is to help or maybe implement each and every operation of a database system, right? Then we have partially touched upon the three schema architecture. Then we have mentioned that in a database case, whenever we are going to design database system, you need database schema, right? It is basically when we say database, what is the database schema? It is a simple representation or maybe syntax for a database which we are going to design, right? So you need to have this idea on this term called conceptual representation. So sometimes people say it is a conceptual, or maybe we can use term logical, but it is slightly different, right? This concept is one representation, logic is second representation, right? So like whenever you are going to a classroom and teacher is discussing a new topic, right? So whatever understanding you receive, you gain after listening to that teacher, I mean listening to that concept. So first impression is called concepts or conceptual understanding. And when on the next day when you are trying to solve a problem by using same concepts, then the understanding on your mind about that particular topic becomes logical, right? So DB, I mean schema or maybe database schema basically hints, or you can relate that the schema represents the first, or schema draws the first impression about the possible syntax of a database, right? So sometimes broadly it is said it defines the outline or imprint for the database. Sometimes it is also said that, and it primarily controls. So it describes or controls the syntax for our database, which means basically it controls the database storage pattern and how the data will be shown, but to a particular level. I'm saying particular level because it is not possible that you should define this uh, database schema with respect to user, right? You should always say that schema is basically syntax defined for a database, right? That is how the data will be stored, and that is how the data will be shown, right? So that's the most precise definition you can take. And if you take database schema types, primarily there could be like external schema, conceptual or logical schema, and a physical schema, something like that. So in our case, where we have assumed three schema architecture, there are three schemas are used. But if you go for the cloud database, for other database systems, you need to have at least 4 5 more than three schemas will be required, right? So by keeping that, when we have implemented this three schema architecture, we have observed the importance of mappings, right? So mappings are important to achieve some setup or some type of separation. That's what is the referred as the data independence also. So which is referred as DI, and it is important because it is important. DI is important because it implements the separation among the different levels, different schemas, and it provides a capability to make changes at any level without affecting the schema at the other level. That's the main definition. Whenever a question is raised to you that what is DI, you can simply say it is the capability of a database system. It is the capability of a DBMS system to make the changes at any level, at any schema without affecting other schema. So if you want to change the physical schema, if you want to add some additional storage space, additional hard drives, it will not affect the conceptual level, which is the middle level. Similarly, if you want to modify the perform some changes, physical changes or maybe logical changes on the conceptual level, middle level, it will not affect the user schema or maybe the physical schema. That's what the objective, that's what the purpose of DI, right, into the database system, right? So basically what we have said that in the three schema architecture, we have got two possible mappings. One is referred as external to conceptual, and it is referred as, it is named as a conceptual DI. And second one is conceptual to physical on the bottom two layers, which is referred as a physical DI, right? So one of the question is mostly asked in the examination that between these two DIs, which one is difficult to implement, right? So because whenever we are saying implementation of DI, it means you are going to create mapping, right? You should always have this idea. The DI, data independence, is achieved only through the creation of mappings, right? So mappings are the way through which we can implement the data independence concept, right? And so suppose we have to implement physical DI. In that case, you need to create new ways of defining mappings, right? So people often say that creating the physical DI is equivalent to defining the access path of data objects, right? So sometimes this is referred as. Similarly, for this conceptual DI, you can use some means to define the mapping of physical conceptual schema to the GUI where user is sitting, right? So you can briefly state conceptual DIs are achieved by schema connections to user interface, because on the user interface level, user is available and schema definition is available into the conceptual level. So you can define the mapping between schema to the GUI portion, right? Something like that. Similarly, if you want to implement a DI, physical DI, you need to, or you can provide the access path to the physical location of a data value, right? Because in the case of physical DI, physical layer is involved, where we are having hard drives. So you can define the access path, you can change the access path to define the physical data independence, right? So by observing these two simple facts, you can decide which DI is, or which DI is difficult to implement, right? That's the difficult to implement, right? So you can easily answer this, and this is very important to understand that, because based on this fact only, you can say that, okay, I can perform a change in physical level easily, I can perform the change in conceptual level easily, or maybe you can perform the change on the user level schema easily, because each and every schema, each and every level is strictly bounded by these mappings between these two consecutive layers, right? So after revising these things, you can easily correlate or maybe find out answer for these questions. So first question here, it is, what is the role of database schema? Now you can read it or you can answer it. What is the possible advantages of three schema architecture of database? Uh, and further, there is a question called, what is the possible scenarios for which more than three schemas are required, right? So that's what one of the example is, cloud-based system, or maybe distributed database, or maybe peer-to-peer database, or maybe parallel database. So there we need to have more than three schemas, right? Because three schema architecture is good for centralized database, right? Also list the challenges. So whenever we are going for more than three schema, or maybe let me put more than n schema, or more than one schema. So you need to have this idea, in case we are going for more than n number of schema, or more than three number of schemas, the challenges will be more like, to implement this, you need to have different levels of mapping, different, different schema needs to be fine. So that's always there. So whenever you're adding a level, you need to have some challenges. Similarly, uh, you need to say which DI is difficult to implement. This is what we have mentioned also. To answer this question, you need to have some justification, right? So these are the few questions we need to immediately correlate with whatever question or whatever level we have discussed, or you can go through some of the portion of the book to get an idea about these questions, right? Now, going further, this is something which I was talking about, that whenever we have three schema, and each level we are having three schema defined and mapping between them. So to create these schema, we need to have a specific language, or maybe procedure, or maybe package, right? So let's take from the bottom, like in the physical level, internal schema is placed, internal schema is created. So in the internal schema simply controls the syntax for the data storage, like how the data will be stored actually. So in the most of the cases, most of the hard storage devices, initially the B tree or B plus tree structure is used. Structure or maybe data structure is used. Nowadays we are having advanced kind of hardware systems where we are having column store structure, then we have hive structure store. So there are various advanced or recent ways of creating the schema at the internal or maybe physical level. So to define this structure on the hard drives, you will be having this specific type of languages which are referred as a storage definition language, right? So any language, any programming language also which can create the internal schema may be referred as a storage definition language, right? Similarly, for creating a schema at conceptual level, whatever expression, whatever language, whatever procedure package you use, uh, these are referred as, these are commonly called as a data definition language. So this we are going to use in the labs also, in our labs also, like in SQL, which is language we will be experimenting with in the labs. In SQL, there is this specific class of commands which is used to create the database, right? Create the schema, create the schema at the conceptual level, right? Similarly, if you go up, so there is this because in the first on the top level where we are assuming that users are available, and this schema is referred as external schema. Uh, to create these different views like view 1, view 2, view 3, and view n, you will be having different languages like to create. So suppose if you go to the ATM terminal, this interface is designed by different manufacturer, different vendor. So these terminals are designed by some company. They are having their own language to code these interaction or these interfaces on terminal. So that language which creates this interface on the ATM is one of the VDL language, view definition language. And if you see the net banking page of SBI system, they are using different uh, language, different package to create web browser based interface, right? So which can be equivalent to view 2. Similarly, if you go to the view 3, it could be a simple interface on your app which is coming from the same banking company. So that again is created by some other language. So these all interfaces are created by using different programming languages. So you can club all these three into VDL, right? So this is something introductory to you. Yes, you can always explore one of the field for your expertise. So primarily, you can have this fact that HDL is being used by uh, mostly by the vendors who are providing these hard drives or storage units. DDL is primarily in the between, in the middle layer. DDL is being primarily used by the DBA, which is database administrator, one of the user of the database, and a program like us, like in the labs, whenever we are going for SQL experimentation, we are going to use these things. VDL is primarily used by the person who is having these applications, these interfaces, or maybe it can be provided by the DBMS software also sometimes, right? So by this having this impression, let's go to see how different types of users are using different views, and how these different views are well supported by a DBMS software, right? So primarily, it has been observed that whatever types of user we can have on a database system or on a DBMS software, these can be placed primarily into three broad categories, three broad groups, right? So first type of user could be a simple user, like we are going to the ATM. So we are uh, assumed, or we are instantiated as a casual user, right? So when we say it is a casual user, it means that user will not have any idea about the database structure, that is for sure, and he will not have any idea about the queries thing, right? That's why he is called casual user. Second type of users are assumed as a programmer, right? Like if you are going to the database lab and performing some experimentation, performing some commands, you're a programmer. It could be a trainee, it could be an experienced user, like in the case of SBI system, officers who are sitting in the bank and they are having more privilege on the same database, right? So they can be considered as a experienced user, or maybe informed user, or maybe trained user, right? On the same database, we could have this third type of user, which is called kind of admin of the system or admin of the database. So first name usually being used by most of the persons are called DBA, which is database administrator, right? Other could be like database designer, other could be a database manager, and mostly it is being used by the system, referred by the system admin. So these last category of user is the user who is having maximum privileged access on the database. He can perform anything, means he can create the database, he can manipulate the entire structure, entire content, and he can delete also, right? These are the three possible steps or three possible stages in a database. Eventually, fourth could be like uh, he can basically optimize the performance of database. That could be also one of the possible use of the DBA authority or DBA access, right? So let's see how these different users are interacting with the database and how their request for the data, their interaction with the database system is being handled by the database management software components, right? So let's see first broadly you can have a basic glance on this diagram. So let me make a little, yeah. So it is fit now. So you can see primarily, so on the top you can see users. Users are like the DBA staff, casual user, application programmers, and there is this parametric user, right? So we have primarily three specific type. So this parametric user is also falling into the category of casual user. In this figure, it is placed differently because in some cases the data request is different. Data request which this simple user is moving, it is of this nature. That's why it is placed in the as a fourth use case, which is again falling into the class of casual user. So primarily you have possibility of three types of user, right? And there are various components placed. You can see, I mean, some are rectangular box, some are cylindrical, then there is this dashed line, then there is this complete line. There are some components like storage database on the bottom, then we have store data manager, then we have this rectangle box called concurrency control, backup recovery, such systems. Then there is a very important component called runtime database processor, which is assumed as a query processor in a generic definitions. There is this analytical box which is having system catalog, data dictionary, right? So in this whole diagram, in this whole figure, you can see there are two storage units. One is called storage database or database is stored. This is the data store where actual data is kept. Another is basically system catalog, data dictionary. It is sometimes called as a metadata store or metadata database store, right? So if you correlate this diagram with the diagram of database system, there also we are having two main cylindrical box to store the data, right? So here you can see, let's take the first case where a casual user is posing a query, right? So for any database system or any system or software where database is placed, database is available to store the data and serve the user query. So whenever a casual user is submitting a simple query, like in our case, if we go to the ATM, so on ATM we are having a interface which is interactive, right? You can select option, you can enter the inputs and then select and process, right? So for any kind of interactive interface, user will be operating or user will be submitting his data request. So these data request, these operations, user actions are being converted into query, and these queries will be sent to the query compiler placed well within the DBMS. And whatever query is we have sent as an operation into the system, it will be compiled naturally first, then it will be sent to another component which is called query optimizer, right? So query optimizer will simply arrange your query in so that it can be efficiently processed, right? So then it will be sent to a component called runtime database processor. So runtime database processor simply, so after getting optimized query, after getting an improved query, runtime data processor simply uh, communicate with the system catalog and ask where is the data stored which is required in this user query, right? So once the response is received that the data requested by user query is stored in this access path, it will simply extract the data from stored data. That's the simple flow, right? So for a simplistic query interaction, it will go to interactive query interface, then query compiler, optimizer, runtime database processor, and then simply after getting the access path of the data, it will simply extract the data and send back to the casual user. This is how different basic query request has been addressed or processed, right? Now, if we have another user who is basically having more privilege or maybe better platform to interact with the data, like in the case of SBI PO, or maybe any user who is having higher privilege onto the database system, he will have different interface to interact, right? In some cases, it is a command prompt or terminal where commands can be typed. In some cases, it is a different interface where user is having higher privilege, like in the case of bank, these employees in the bank are having different interface to perform some operation on the database. So whenever a high-end user is available, like programmers or like POs, they will have their own application interface, like they are having interface. So once they submits a query or submits a operation action onto the database, their instruction will be sent to a pre-compiler, right? So the purpose of pre-compiler here is to separate the database related query in one place and the host language code into one place. So suppose a PO person, a person who is a trained person or a programmer, is submitting his task from a web page, right? And that web page could be designed in the HTML. So in that web page, HTML and the SQL query is built, right? So if he raised some query, this entire code will be sent to the pre-compiler, and pre-compiler simply separates or extract the uh, SQL code separately, and remaining code, HTML code, will be sent to the host language compiler. So after separating these two different codes or two different language expressions to different compilers, they will be compiled, and after compiling, they will be sent to the compiled transactions. They will again bind and divide into one single transaction, and this simple compiled transaction will be sent to the runtime database processor for simple data extraction. It is as same as the previous case, right? There is this third possibility, and there is this third types of use of the system where we are assuming parametric user is being used, or parametric user is being involved in the transaction. So this is one of the case which we are using in modern scenarios. Uh, so if you take out one instance, like in the recent days, SBI has issued a specific, you know, messages to get the account status detail, something like that. So by typing a message and by sending that message to 566 or something like that, you can get the information about the possible amount. So you can say the status of account also can be checked. The amount or balance can be also checked, something like that. So these kind of users or these kind of use of the database system is called parametric user, because you are asking or you are interacting with a database system by using directly parametric messages, parametric queries. So you, in these transaction or in these communication, you are sending some specific parameters to get the data retrieved, right? So this is something available in many services. Many database systems or many software platforms are providing these kind of services, like to get the result status, to get the, you know, score or score update of particular match. You can have these kind of services. So in many databases, this facility is available, and this facility is having a specific way of addressing the data request. So user will be sending a simple query, and this query will have a hard code structure. So it will directly goes to the compiled instruction stage, where your instructions will be processed, and these data requests will be extracted, and it will send to the runtime database processor, right? So this is how generic queries will be answered, and generic situations on the database will be answered. Naturally, we will, in the upcoming classes, we will be seeing or observing the different uh, these different situations in a more detailed way, right? There is a specific scenario which we are assuming for database administrator. So DBA is a high-end user. He will have a lot of core responsibility on the database, right? So a DBA person will not be going to use the database in the way which casual user, application programmer, or the parametric is using, right? So because in the case of casual, application, and parametric user, mainly the queries are of nature retrieval, that's first type. Second, or maybe for the transaction type, like if you are performing amount transfer from your account to others account, it is a second type of it. One could be like you can simply request a system to give the mini statement of your account, something like that, right? So there are one or two possible ways by which we are going to use the database system, but DBA person will not be going to use in the similar fashion. He will be having a lot of important tasks to be performed on the database. The first task and the first and most important task which DBA will be performing is the creation of the database, right? So he will be the responsible person to create a database. So to create a database, he will have DDL statements, right? So we have just seen the DDL. It is data definition language statements. So he will initiate a lot of DDL expressions, DDL statements, and these statements will be sent to compiler, DDL compiler, because DDL is what? It is instruction, it is a command, so it will goes to the DDL compiler. And after getting compiled, you can assume the database structure is created. Database is created, though data is not inserted, right? I'm talking about database creation. The structure will be created after DDL statement compilation, right? And whatever structure we have created, it will be kept into the system catalog or data dictionary storage. So whatever definition, whatever syntax we have created, it will be kept here. So after doing this creation statement, if he can create, he can delete also. That's very clear. That's very obvious, right? There are various specific cases where uh, the DBA will be playing a role, right? So those all possible high-end operations which a DBA person will be doing, all considered as a privileged commands, right? Like the simplest case could be a DBA person can disconnect all the active users on the database by simply issuing one command, right? A DBA person can restart the database. A DBA person can restart the database system. He can provide a priority to the user, like any user who is logging between 10 to 11 are privileged user. They will have more privilege, more access on the database uh, as compared to the user who is logging after 12 o'clock, something like that. He can prioritize. He can take the snapshot of the data. He can take the he can perform the archiving on the database. He can partition the database. So there are various high-end tasks which we have mentioned in the lecture 2, which these high-end operations will be done by the DBA on the database. So you can see he can issue a command, and that command will be simply sent to the runtime database processor, and runtime database processor will interact if it is required with the system catalog, right? So basically, most of the cases, it is observed that if you assume the lifeline of a database, if a database system lives to 15 years, so in that 15-year duration, uh, most of the queries are coming from the casual user, programmer, and parametric user. So whatever number of queries are thrown to the database system, it is the 10% query which is coming from DBA. 90% query are coming from the casual application and parametric user, right? So that's what the purpose of different flows in this diagram from the different user. Now, if you read carefully on the bottom, there are two additional blocks has been placed. One is store data manager. That's one block. Second block is concurrency control or backup or recovery subsystems. So these subsystems are provided to maintain. You can say there is a term called atomicity or integrity. Means whatever you are doing, it will be stable, right? What if you are performing a transaction, performing operation, and power goes off? What if a system fails? System means your laptop desktop fails. What will happen to the data, right? So to deal with all these situations, there is this block placed, right? Concurrency control, backup control, recovery subsystems. So to understand these internals, what is the internal things are going to happen in this particular block, we have assigned a specific chapter of this syllabus, which we will be discussing in the maybe the last lecture number 25 or 30 or something like that, right? So this is a specific area of discussion, right? And another block which is called store data manager. Here we are placing the access path, or maybe some other details. Sometimes it is called users log also. So these things are placed here. So whatever components we are looking right now are available in this diagram are the fundamental elements, fundamental components, right? You cannot have this assumption that in the world whatever number of DBMS softwares are available, they all are having these components as it is. It's not. Each database management software will have some of these elements common, right? But they are having their own specific elements into it, right? Like if you compare Oracle 9i, which was a DBMS, it may have these components because This is the fundamental elements, and Oracle 9y was the one of the first generational DBMS system. But if you see into Oracle 11G or Oracle 12V, which is the recent version of the Oracle DBMS, you will have more components into it. You can always search into the Google that what is the block diagram of Oracle 12G or 12B, right? So by in searching into Google images, you can have these kind of images where these components will be placed along with some additional components, right? So you can always add a component based on the requirements. This particular figure is taken to understand that what are the possible elements, computing elements, and which element, which box block will be computing or interacting with which particular component, right? So that's it for today's discussion. Right. So if you have anything to ask or raise, just let me know so that we can take out these questions.